At a major Hollywood studio, in a corner office of Sub-Basement D, the development executives toil in obscurity to reboot it. Love that funky fresh theme song. Gets you hyped for the episode. Welcome back for the penultimate episode of Reboot It Season 2, the quarantine season. We are still here in our personal corner offices, waiting out the end of the pandemic, waiting for John Peters to unlock the doors back into his production office, and frankly, we are enjoying our time away.
Oh, the smells that are going to await us when that door opens. It's going to be pretty bad.
All those jars full of suspicious fluids. Yeah. Yeah.
I've been brining pickles the whole time.
I'm the pickle man.
Well, let's get out right up front before we even jump into this epic episode on G.I. Joe. Next week, we are going live, people. This is not a drill. Live streaming Reboot It.
That's right.
We are going to be rebooting for the season finale of Season 2, the Fantastic Four, baby.
Yeah, baby.
The pressure, you guys, because this has been done so badly so many times. How are we going to do it?
There's already been two reboots. There's been two reboots of Fantastic Four already. So I don't know if we've ever rebooted something with so many reboots that themselves were not successful.
I mean, arguably has never been done successfully in like 3 tries plus an animated series. I mean, they just cannot crack this thing.
It's the exact sort of thing that I caution us against. And the fact that we're doing this is ridiculous.
Live, no less.
I remain the B.A. Baracus of this podcast. I remain.
Yes. I don't want to go on the plane. Ooh.
By the way, somebody really needs to do some fan art of us as the A-Team, because that is like perfect.
And if you,
I would love it.
Oh, shit, I'm Murdoch. I hate you guys.
You are definitely Murdoch, Ron. That's true. All right. Well, we normally try to keep it secret until we drop the episode, but we are telling you early because, of course, it's a live stream, so you are going to be there to drop your comments. We may or may not listen because, hey, we're Hollywood. But make sure you are there with your opinions. We're going to be there next Saturday.
That was the most savagely real comment that we will ever make on the show. Well, listen,
beautiful.
We don't care, but we'll listen. That's the most Hollywood thing ever.
So May 30th. Put it on your calendar. Here are all the details you are going to need. Make sure you are there. Of course, we're going to put it up after the live stream and keep it up on the channel, but the best experience you could possibly have is to be there for the live stream. May 30th, Fantastic Four closing out the quarantine season of Reboot It. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have got a big one for you today as well. An 80s classic, another one that has gone up and down, a lot of different versions. The movies, So we'll see what we can do. Helping me reboot G.I. Joe, we have from Hot Takes with Billy Business, a senior producer at Screen Junkies, Billy Business.
I'm ready to reboot. I've got my Reboot It beer, and that's about all I need to do a good G.I. Joe.
Billy, do you have a favorite Joe or member of Cobra if you're evil that way?
So full disclosure, I have my G.I. Joe knowledge stops at the 2 live action movies that they've done. I had never watched the cartoon. There's never comic books or toys, never had them. So I liked the one that The Rock was. I can't remember his name, but that one was neat.
All right.
Oh my God. I'm going to have to go into witness protection after this one. This and He-Man will just kill me.
Is this another property that you think is stupid?
All right. Let me just set the record straight for just a second. When I say stupid, this is stupid, that's stupid, I say it lovingly. A lot of the things that I love are silly and stupid. Like, I love wrestling. I love Star Wars. They're all comic books and stuff. They're all kind of silly. I mean it with love. If you love He-Man, I don't think that you yourself are stupid. I just mean all the stuff is kind of silly and fun, and it's fun to get into it.
Well, yeah, I just think you set a couple of them off prancing around in a Power Rangers outfit after dissing He-Man. I mean, that is some hot kettle.
The dude wears a leather thong, and you have the balls to tell me that is not silly? Come on now. Well, you can love it.
Hey, at least he doesn't combine with 4 other dudes to stumble around.
We are getting into it early, and so on the opposite side of the ring, we have Ed Greer from the Nerd Goat podcast.
Hey guys, you know what? I can't stand that my image is so combative. Damn it, why is this?
Who's to say, really? I mean, it's unfair.
Why? I don't know why it would be like that.
Ed, G.I. Joe, love it, hate it, in between. What are you doing?
You know what? As most things should do as you mature, it has gone from love to hate to middling respect to on the shelf in the back of my memory palace. I got a lot of stuff chunked up in front of it in the memory palace. I got to move some of that stuff. Move the stuff. You know what I mean? So like it's there in my mind. But when I dust it off, just like breaking out one of those old long boxes, if you read comics, or breaking out some old albums, if you dig music or whatever that is, when you break it out, the smell of it gets back in you. You start to, gee, you're a real American hero. Like, that's like real to you in that moment. And like, yeah. And I got the Marvel app, so I could read G.I. Joe comics all day.
Those G.I. Joe comics are something we'll come back to. All right, last person to bring into the panel discussion, the co-host of the Nerd Goat podcast. You've already seen him, Ron Swallow.
You guys, G.I. Joe.
What are your thoughts, Ron?
Guys, G.I. Joe.
Look, I'm not going to say that I didn't enjoy G.I. Joe as a kid, because I did. I loved it. I played with the toys. I watched the cartoon every morning that I could watch it. Like, I loved it as a kid. But let's be real. When you go back and rewatch that stuff, you have to look at it with a grain of 4 million pieces of salt, because it is not the greatest cartoon in the world. It's not super well written. I'm sorry, guys. It's true. Go back and watch Scooby-Doo too. It's terrible. But that doesn't mean you can't come up with something great from what it is and make it something interesting. Because I think that's something you guys and I are going to do. I believe in it.
Oh, walk it back, Ron. You're going to get those death threats, man. Walk it back. just jive, walk it back, my friend.
Ron is somehow still riding the positivity train, even as he savages G.I. Joe.
Well, let's be real. I halfway enjoyed those movies. You know me. I enjoy a good fight scene. There's a couple of good fight scenes in there. I'll give it that. My positive spin on the G.I. Joe movies is there was some fun fight scenes. Well,
okay. I just have to. Okay. I have to. The G.I. Joe comic books, as lurid and silly as they frankly are, aren't whack like that. Those movies had like, just imagine your favorite hero who just drops down and shoots people and stuff. Imagine they put a mech suit on him and run him up a building and it's Marlon Wayans. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what they did to a lot of these characters.
I like those movies. I thought they were pretty fun.
No. Okay, so this, wait, I have to ask a really important question. Why do people like G.I. Joe? Because I think, I don't get it. Like, let me one up Ron and Billy. I actively dislike this franchise. This is the most development office conversation I'm ever going to have, because here I am about to reboot something that I dislike. Like, this is not, I think it's kind of dumb. I don't like this. I think this gives me stink face. I'm like, what is this? So please, somebody explain to me, what is the appeal of G.I. Joe?
Look, I can explain it to you. You grew up in a military family. And no, I'm just kidding.
Ron, about to insult the troops. Let's just keep it going, people.
Let's just do it.
Stolen Valor on Reboot It.
Let me tell you my liberal views, but with the Southern accent, so it confuses you.
All right.
But seriously,
go.
It's memory. It's sense memory. It's the remember our Saturday morning episode on Patreon?
But this is the thing, because I was a kid, I was the prime target for G.I. Joe in 1985, and I hated it.
Oh, interesting.
I hated it.
So let's get through this then. Why?
That's Dr. Phil.
I just feel like it had nothing to offer me.
Tell me why you hated this so much.
Well, Dr. Phil. No, look, I just feel like it had nothing to offer. It was, I loved He-Man and I loved Thundercats, which are stupid, right? So we've been through this, but there was something about like the designs were crazy. The world that they existed in were crazy. The villains were crazy. It just had stuff that would fire off the imagination. And then like Transformers, I was never a huge, because the triumvirate, right, is He-Man, Transformers, G.I. Joe. Like, you were one of those kids when you were a kid in the 80s. And so Transformers, I was always lukewarm on, but I at least got it, right? Because they're from another planet, they're robots in disguise, they're the size of buildings, there's, it's cool stuff. I feel like G.I. Joe was Transformers with all the cool stuff taken out of it.
Well, dude, but that's why Hasbro is actively trying to put together a toy universe where G.I. Joes would mingle with Mask, which would mingle with Transformers, which would mingle with all. That's why they're trying to do that, because all of them dudes need some spice. Yeah, all of those properties need some spice. Maybe the spice will come from each other. But what? Because I really do. I can't hook into this franchise, so I'm being a little bit funny, but I'm also being really serious. Dude, I'll be serious.
Is it the characters? What is it?
That comic, that Marvel comic, is just an ad. It's like the comic. Oh, it's obviously they did a bunch of crossover comics, but that one really is an ad. And it was an ad with mythos. It's like being entranced by the story of the Wheaties box or something. That's what being a G.I. Joe fan is. Larry Hama wrote very detailed files on the back of their little toy things. And last things last, the toy articulation, as a fat, sedentary, John Milius, faux liberal, faux conservative kid, like what I'm saying? I was a real, like, just fat little military liker. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't ever going to be in it, really into it. And just the configuration of the toys when I was at toy playing age, just the shit you could do with them, the ways you could pose them, the way that you could make them murder each other with a verisimilitude that was far greater than the big, clunky ass Thundercats toys. You got to put a battery in their back literally to make them even do anything. He's doing the Heil Hitler. You know what I'm saying? It's so ridiculous. The articulation on most of those other toys was trash. Even He-Man was low key trash compared to the way that G.I. Joe was able to murder. You're able to pose him in so many murder situations. Your young mind would blow up. But I do understand the cartoon was terrible.
Well, but this is my assumption even with because I was never even into the toys, right? And I don't mean to be like just the defiant jerk here, but I always thought the toys were kind of trash. But my impression from the outside looking in is the coolest thing about the toys is just all the gear, right? Just because there were just a million different combinations of weapons and vehicles and this and that. And then I always thought the costumes were super whack, but that was because over here I had like Batman who was in like a legit costume, and these dudes are like wearing cargo pants, and it was a little bit like, yeah, give me the costume that looks like a bat. I don't want this dude in the cargo pants.
Look, what I hear you saying is you hate the military.
Dude, the number of dislikes on this video already, I can tell, is going to be staggering.
So look, I'm not trying to bring a tear it all apart sort of mentality into this. All I'm saying is, like, I want to be full disclosure. There is one person, at least in this conversation, that just doesn't get it. So I'm going to be trying to get it as we go along.
I think you look, as someone who did not grow up, look, I'm an 80s kid by, just by numbers, but in terms of like what it means to be an 80s kid, I'm not. I was born in 86, so by the time I was cognizant of what was happening, the 80s were over. I was aware of G.I. Joe, and I think maybe some of the appeal seems to be kind of, there's a romanticism of American military within it. It's like, yeah, maybe the Pentagon and soldiers and stuff is like a little above your pay grade and it's a little boring. But what if within the military there was also a dude that looked like Darth Vader and he was the bad guy? And instead of, Iraq or Iran, it was Cobra, like I almost feel like it was taking... in a weird way, it was taking things like a Power Rangers or like a comic book, like a Batman, but in a very roundabout way, grounding it in something that we have in the real world, which is the military, which is kind of like saying, like, how come we love those, like, with Mission Impossible, it's the IMF, the Impossible Mission Force, which is the dumbest name I've ever heard in my life. It's kind of like those branches of things that don't really exist, but we kind of associate it with that so that it grounds it in like our real world enough that it feels kind of cool. So I get the low level escapism of G.I. Joe, even though I was never a part of it, which is maybe why I really like those two movies, because it was really silly fun, which is what I just assumed G.I. Joe always was.
And going off of that, I think that we could basically make a movie that is talking about a special forces. The G.I. Joe is their elites, beyond their elites. They don't call the Navy SEALs. They don't call the Rangers. They call G.I. Joe for the impossible mission, the mission that no one is able to accomplish, that needs to happen immediately with no plan, because they're the guys who can come up with a plan on the spot or improv to make it work out. Like, they're trained to do that specific thing. And to get into G.I. Joe, I would even think it would be interesting to have who our main character is trying to get into G.I. Joe and prove his mettle, something along the lines of like, his main wound is that, his dad was in the military and he's failed here or there because he's like a little too creative or whatever, but here his creativity might actually pay off, or something along those lines, so that we're then entering into G.I. Joe in a more like sort of recognizable fashion. Because even if you're not in the military, everybody recognizes wanting to make your parents proud of you. So like maybe that's an entrance into it. Doesn't have to be that, but that could possibly be the entrance into this elite force. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think that that's valid. But before we jump too far into it, let me just give the broad strokes of G.I. Joe, because I think it raises some interesting questions that relate to what you were just saying, Ron.
Yeah.
So G.I. Joe was actually created in 1962. It was originally a line of 12-inch action figures back before people even really called them action figures. And it was really a celebration of the World War II generation when it was first created. I mean, this was a romanticization of the Army. It did not have all of the gaudy names and costumes and weaponry. It was just very much like clean-cut, aspirational military figures. That went away for a long time. And then it was revived in the 80s, where they turned it into more of a spy franchise. They turned it into something more like superheroes meets James Bond meets the military. And as Ed mentioned, a guy named Larry Hama was hired by Marvel, a legendary writer in comic books. And Larry Hama basically built out the world and the mythology of G.I. Joe. And that Marvel comic book series that was largely written by Hama is actually really well regarded in comic book history for both the writing and some really top quality art at the time. And so I think a lot of G.I. Joe fans found their entry point either through the comic book series or through the Saturday morning cartoon that was produced almost exactly concurrent with He-Man, which we've done on the show, and Transformers, which we will do on the show. And so G.I. Joe was first adapted for the screen in the form of long-form cartoons, but it made the big budget Hollywood jump in, I believe it was 2009, with G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra. And so G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, a lot of people call it G.I. Joe in name only, because it used a lot of the names and ostensibly looks, but not really, from the cartoon and the toy line, and then invented a whole lot more backstory, created a bunch of interconnected personal relationships, and then gave them all sorts of weird gear and tech that just wasn't from anything. It was just sort of made up whole cloth. That was then weirdly kind of reboot-quelled with G.I. Joe Retaliation, which was its sequel, where almost every character from the first movie was killed off in the first act. And they took this very back to basics approach where they had to find the original Joe, who turned out to be Bruce Willis. Also, I don't think something from the actual toy line, but I think, and here's the thing, this is why I wanted to go through all that. I think the floundering of those movie series speaks to the idea that in a post 9/11, post invasion of Iraq, post Team America World Police world, this is just a tough franchise to crack. Thoughts on that?
You know what I and maybe Ron and Ed, you guys can speak to this a little bit. Because they are right now in development for a spinoff of Snake Eyes. And just as someone who only watched these two movies, I always thought that it was weird, not weird, but interesting. The dichotomy of like complete G.I. Joe, real American hero, and like rah nationalism. But then on the side was this Japanese, I believe, like samurai warrior, like kind of side stuff that almost seemed like, oh yeah, and by the way, here's this too. Like I don't know why like the samurai stuff just feels so incongruous with like all the like militaristic stuff. It seems like they don't belong together.
He's a ninja.
But that's what I'm saying. Like
not a samurai.
First, whatever. Does he have a sword? Does he have a sword and kill people?
That was just responsible for 34,000 dislikes. just that exchange from both sides. The two warring sides of that are just disliking each other.
And I'm out. This was good. We did not achieve reboot. I'm gonna go. But you get what I'm saying. Like I'd always felt like Snake Eyes and that kind of stuff like seemed to be more interesting, which is why I feel like that's why they're like, okay, to your point, Bill, it's like, if we can't crack G.I. Joe, there's this completely other section of G.I. Joe that almost has nothing to do with the real American hero part of it. Well, let's do that instead.
You know what I will say, as somebody who, again, was never into this, one of the angles I always thought was like, you know, in the movie Armageddon, the drill into the asteroid movie, where they sort of round up the crew and you just get little snippets of scenes where it's just all these guys living such drastically different lives. They're all different like races and personality types, and some of them are family guys and some of them are like almost killing themselves and whatever. To me, that always felt like G.I. Joe. Like that idea that you just found the craziest dudes from all these different walks of life and brought them together for the mission. I could see something like that being interesting. And to your point, Billy, like one of those guys just so happens to come from a samurai or a ninja background. It's like there's something kind of interesting is like, is G.I. Joe just every Pulp Fiction trope mashed up into one army unit?
It's blood sport military style.
Well, that's what I've been trying to told you at. Though that's for real, because that's their whole oeuvre. If you see it a certain way, it is these guys stand out from the average soldier, and no disrespect to the average soldier, but we're talking about the difference between hero and superhero, right? And these guys have these sort of superhero identities, and it is because of their specialties. The whole point of G.I. Joe, to sell you each individual toy, is each one of these dudes has an indispensable skill. You know what I mean? And when you look at it that way, it's a team of, it's Dirty Dozen, but they all have specialties. They're not just psychos. They're not the Suicide Squad where half of them are there because they want to die. These guys are, a squad, and they're being put together. What if Ocean's 11 was military?
But that's where I think you get into the problem, right? Because like Dirty Dozen, I totally get it. And I totally get that comparison. But the problem is the Dirty Dozen their mission is very uncomplicated. They have to do their mission because they're just trying to escape with their lives. And when it becomes more about like, we are a well-funded, well-equipped division of the US military that's taking proactive actions around the world, that's when you become Team America. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. But we're trying to sell. I don't think it takes Peters to bust through the door to tell us that we're trying to sell toys here. You know what I'm saying? We're trying to tell a great story, but in the end, there is a certain amount of technology. That's another thing people don't get. G.I. Joe is a science fiction property, full stop. Its whole thing is science fiction. It's got Dr. Mindbender. They make a dude out of the DNA of Genghis Khan. You know what I mean? They're doing all types of stuff. You know, there's ninjas, for Christ's sakes. You know what I mean?
Samurais?
So, like, not samurai. Or samurai. Don't put the S on the end of that. It's disrespectful. But yeah, so that's all I'm saying. Like, if we look at it that way and try to engineer a situation, which is kind of what the second movie tried to do, and like you said, try to strip it down. But I think they just stripped it down too much. There is such a thing as stripping down too much.
I think that what happens is Cobra. We have to have Cobra Commander, and literally, I think we should go to bat and have Destro with a freaking silver face. I think you should pay homage to the silly, ridiculous things that are in there, and they start maybe infiltrating or just trying to. They just take out bases, and no one can seem to stop them. They have this technology that's like nobody's seen before, and it's turning off this, it's turning off that, and then you need to get the guys who have the ability to work against something like that, and that just happens to be this ragtag bunch of guys, or you have to get them together, and you're creating G.I. Joe to your.
I think that's an interesting conundrum, because that's sort of what that 2009 movie did, right? I mean, It was a bit of an origin story, though. Yeah. And like, they gave you the origin of Destro's silver face, and they gave you the origin of, it was very much an origin story. Are we going to tell a G.I. Joe origin story, or is G.I. Joe extant when we start?
I think they are extant, because I hate origin stories so much now. I think you're right. I don't think it's a good idea to tell an origin story, although I do love the idea of what your guys are saying of bringing together this group of people. So maybe it's not an origin story as much as it may maybe like at least shows how these guys got together in their current form at some point.
Bill, you had said earlier that like this franchise is so hard to crack, just in this world that we're in now. Like, maybe that's a good place to start. Like, maybe, I know sometimes when you do these reboots and stuff, this is, maybe a trope, but I think it might be a good place to start is maybe G.I. Joe has been shut down for years. Like, maybe the G.I. Joe program just didn't make sense anymore. And our story is an origin story of like how Stella got her groove back, how G.I. Joe got its groove back, like really answering the question, what does a real American hero look like in 2020? What does that even mean anymore?
Honestly, that's genius. Now, what does that actually mean?
I don't know, but I'm just saying, if G.I. Joe if what it was in the 80s doesn't make sense in a post 9/11 world, then what is the function of a G.I. Joe, No,
but I think the easy solution for that is that America gets attacked. If America gets attacked, then there's nothing problematic about the military. You know what I mean? Like, the problematic parts of the military is when the military acts unilaterally in like a proactive way. And look, this isn't a geopolitical debate here, because I think there's a ton of great arguments to be made about U.S. military hegemony making the world safer in general. I just don't think you can ever bring that nuance to an on-screen story without it becoming really dry. And so I think that means that if they are literally defending the American homeland rather than going into some other country or basically invading, Cobra Island or whatever, it becomes way more palatable. It's the White House down or Olympus has fallen effect. You know what I mean? That makes it so easy to cheer for the military.
And if we do this right, we don't have to make it a specific country. We can make up a literal, like you said, Cobra Island, where this guy is now, Cobra Commander has taken over this area.
How about this? I mean,
starts his own army.
What if you treat this series as almost like a do-over of our response to 9/11, which may sound a little bit disrespectful, but like the biggest problem with the way we treated 9/11 is that we didn't understand how terrorist factions actually worked. And we tried to use 9/11 to push us into a conventional war with a state actor when that was not what we needed to do. And so,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
But see, and there you go, Bill. That's why I wasn't talking, because you got to get there yourself. And I understand, dude. It's got to be your idea. And I get it, because it's really real, though. What you just said, there are responses to threats that must be a freaking ninja, a giant dude with a gun bigger than him. You know what I mean? There are things you need to respond to with that, rather than, hey, sir, let's all bow and have tea and talk about this and that. No,
there's something kind of interesting. There's something kind of interesting, like if you do it in a Michael Bay way, where it happens so fast and so clean, and it's just one scene, but it's almost like before every kick-ass action military sequence, there's one sequence of like the general meeting with an ambassador from the other country and like so it's like every time the military is doing something, you understand that the country they're going into or whatever is on board. You know what I mean? So it's always America driving the action, but it's never like, we're going to do this whether you like it or not, which again is, I think, one of the problems people have with the way the military works.
So my question is, with all of this, just so we know going forward with all these ideas, because we're talking about like actual, like borderline heavy stuff here. Is this movie made for 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids, or is this for people who grew up with G.I. Joe and are now adults and want a G.I. Joe kind of on their level?
No, I think what I'm talking about is it's very much made for 14-year-olds. And what we're really doing is almost, without ever addressing it, right? Like this is not something that characters ever talk about, but we are sort of presenting a utopian view of how the military works, right? So in our world, there is not, like we show it, right? We don't just assume anything, we show it. But in our world, there is not like a state actor who is going to protect and harbor terrorists. There is not like a state that is going to demand that we give them concessions politically or economically in order for us to come in and take out the bad guys. We're almost presenting this sort of utopian geopolitical world where everybody just agrees these guys and this stuff are bad and we need to work together to stop it. And America, come on in to do your thing, you know?
Yeah, I love it.
Which is very much a 14-year-old fantasy, and we know that's not real. But I also think that it could be problematic for 35-year-old viewers, and like it could create a lot of pushback. But I think you could do it in like a thoughtful, clever way where it's almost making a statement for how much it's not making a statement, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't up and in their face be like, the military is pushing their way into things they shouldn't be pushing their way into. You just let them actually do it in a way that's cooperative and without saying a word about it.
Right. Like they just do it the right way every time, and we never address it, but that's just how it works. It goes that way. It's almost like if you're a 14-year-old who watches this and then 10 years later, the US goes and does something really, really crap, you would look back and be like, that's never how they did it in G.I. Joe. Like, it shouldn't work that way. You know what I mean?
Morals from G.I. Joe.
I was just saying, like, oh, man, that's why we're in the damn shape we're in, is because we're like, well, that's not how General Kenobi would have done it.
Wait, yeah, why didn't Barack Obama saw through the door with his laser sword?
Chop off Obama's...
But no, you guys are on the right track, I think, not just to please people like me who like G.I. Joe, but come on, we're not trying to make this movie bomb. But like when you look at, you guys are right on it, dude. A ridiculous, it's always ridiculous. And they used to call Cobra terrorists. I don't know if we might even have to bleep this on the recording so we don't get demonetized or whatever. But like they used to call Cobra that word, and now they don't because it's obviously more problematic than it was. But that's what they were in the beginning. So having them commit an act of that nature with, as Ron stated, superior technology. The superior technology is how we get the toys, fellas. I'm serious business about getting these damn toys, dude. You know,
and they got to bring in some genius that makes new toys to go against their toys.
And you know how you present it? You know how you present it? The exact same way that you presented the Falcon. The Falcon just strolled up with a wingsuit flying around. I was in a program, whatever. But it takes 30 seconds for them to explain to you that this dude shows up, got a wingsuit, gonna whoop some ass next to Captain America. And the relationship of them talking to each other sells the fact that they don't give you a bunch of that because you don't need it once you know the guy. So we can do some of that with how they go and adopt their old toys. Watching Roadblock pick up a big stupid gun for the first time in a long time. You know what I mean? He's like, oh, gotta wear my back brace with this some bitch right now or whatever.
I think to me, the thing you need to figure out though is where do those toys come? Oh no.
Already?
We were getting somewhere. 30 minutes.
Gentlemen, hello.
Hello, Mr. Peters.
Hi.
Let me tell you guys, I am really excited about this one because for the first time, I get to inject some of my political views into our movie. And I gotta tell you, I got some thoughts. So here it is, gentlemen. Look, this stays between us. You know the studio. It's very important that we can sell this to China.
I'm sorry, say that again?
To China.
Oh! All right.
Here's the thing, though. You gotta find me a way to not make it seem like China's the bad guy, but I want China to be the bad guy in this movie. They've screwed me out of real estate deals. They've screwed me out of manufacturing. This movie needs to be anti-China, and I will not accept anything less. Make the Chinese the villains of this movie without getting us blackballed by the Communist Party. That is my request. You're fired if you don't do it. Goodbye. Yeah, that was about what I expected. Here's the thing.
Why are we still working for this guy? He seems pretty xenophobic.
Yeah, he's a terrible person. Thank you for my paycheck.
Hey, well, that's the economy, man. In this economy, you're gonna leave a good quarantine check. So look, guys, I think in the end, all we'll have to do to satisfy Mr. Peters is kind of leave China out of the overarching world effort. Because this is the thing. This is what I'm pitching, guys. This is what I'm pitching. America gets attacked. The conventional forces fight back. They are defeated soundly by super technology. They must scrounge in the scrap heaps to find this old program and these old dusty super weapons they used to use when they killed the Scourge back in the days and nobody knew because it was a covert war. Duh, that's why it's covert. Nobody knew about it. And when we won. Now we scrounge up the guys, asteroid movie style, scrounge up the guys, and they have to go fight the monster, right? And I lost it. Damn it! I was right there. Hold on.
Well, what I was going to say before the Peters call was, where does all this technology come from?
There was a war with super tech back in the days, and we won and we shelved it because it was dangerous. And the whole point of the attack is the energy signatures or whatever was used is the signal of these old, this old super tech that everybody decided not to use anymore. Maybe that sounds crazy.
No, there's actually something interesting because again, it fits into what I was talking about with sort of this like just taken for granted utopian vision of things. What if it's basically like, again, sort of what we should have done with nuclear weapons? It's like all the countries just realized this is a thing that nobody should have. And so there was just a resolution that everybody decommissioned it. But then Cobra uses it. And so it becomes sort of a two-hander. It's like, number one, we got to stop Cobra. But then number two, we got to figure out how and where they actually got this from. And if Peter, if Peters has his way, they got it from China. But
well, then we got a MacGuffin B part of the movie or whatever, where they're trying to find where the tech is, where the tech came from or was created from, to combat it as well, right?
Yeah, yes, I think so. And I think also, like, I don't know what that thing is, but it definitely can't be nanotechnology like in that original G.I. Joe movie.
Oh, God.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's something to all that. I think the question becomes, I can't answer this because I don't know it well enough, but like, who are your main characters? Who is the main character? Do we want to look at it from the perspective of a new recruit, like Ron was saying, almost a Men in Black approach to this? I guess they're all technically new recruits if we're getting this program out of the mothballs. Who's the guy who's going around? Who's the Bruce Willis of this thing? Not to even be ironic, because that was technically him in the second G.I. Joe, but like,
yeah,
who's getting his band back together?
You know what I think it should be on some real stuff, especially since he can't talk? My boy Snake Eyes. You're chilling out, having a barbecue on your balcony, and then
with your mask
drops.
Still on.
Yeah. Dude,
like a luchador.
Well, no, I think, you're chilling out. Maybe one of the characters, Beachhead or Ripcord or Stalker, any of these guys is chilling out. And then a ninja drops on his balcony. You're in North Hollywood and a ninja drops on your balcony. And it's time to rock, because the ninja came a calling. And he doesn't even, like I said, I don't know how he's going to tell him the mission brief. I haven't figured that part out yet.
Sign language? Charades?
Yeah.
Baby fish mouth is sweeping the nation.
Because I don't know this property at all, and I feel like I'm drowning and lost a little bit. From a purely pragmatic standpoint, I think the idea with a movie like this, if we're being real with each other, is, like Ed said, to sell toys. So I think it makes sense that you, sprinkle in some of your old favorites, your Roadblocks, your Dukes, whatever's going to sell the most toys. But then you kind of have to bring in your new class so that you can sell more new toys.
Yep.
Okay, so make up some dudes, guys. Let's.
Well, there's a lot of dudes who haven't been used, and I was thinking of, like, obviously, and this is one thing I've always thought about. If there was a new level of technology, and like you were saying, Bill, it's hard to understand what that is. In the comic books, sometimes they bring it up as like rail guns, almost like that thing of Eraser.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
And also one thing we could bite from Warren Ellis, it's straight up in Global Frequency, dropping something of sufficient height from
rods from God,
atmosphere,
they call it. Yeah.
Rods from God, dropping a giant railroad spike into the earth would cause almost a localized extinction level event that they could steal City Hall during.
That's Age of Ultron. That was like the whole third act of that movie was Sokovia was big enough to do that. Yeah.
Well, Ed, what's actually really interesting about the rods from God concept is, what if in the history of our world, Reagan actually got his Star Wars program off the ground. And so this whole war where G.I. Joe was decommissioned happened in the 80s. And so it sort of fits in with the timeline of the toys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so then it becomes, if the struggle is about like space-based weapons and they've just been sitting up there decommissioned since 1986 or whatever, and now Cobra has figured out a way to hack them and controls all of them, then we could even get some like G.I. Joe goes into space, a lot of cool vehicle action. Like that could be interesting.
And we can get a hacker who types on a keyboard really fast.
Well, dude, look, sincerely, finding action gags for each of the specialties of the heroes is the writing job. Finding a way for Tunnel Rat to be in a tunnel so that he can tunnel through something and get something to help us.
I feel like you're starting to make some of these names up, man. Tunnel Rat doesn't. Bookkeeper has to organize the books. Like, these are not real G.I. Joes at a certain point.
These names also all have weird like sexual connotations.
Yeah, right? Ripcord sounds like something that you should consult a medical professional before you try on your partner.
Thunderhead.
Man, and don't forget Combo Head. No, there is a guy named Beachhead, and he's cool.
Dude.
But
That's what I'm telling you.
But yeah. But I also think we shouldn't shy away from Destro, but we can't make Destro somebody you could literally empathize with. I think we make Destro a straight up Darth Vader for real. Like we try our damnedest to make him cool. And maybe if he does lose or create the Cobra Commander in the meantime or something, I understand it's kind of like that other movie, but I don't even like the Cobra Commander. Frankly, if I had my druthers throw the Cobra Commander out the window, we're going to steal his toy next movie. You know what I mean? I think if we present Destro and the Baroness as a cool, like, terrorist leaders, you know, and they're attacking the world with ancient not ancient, but, 1980s super technology. I think you got a stew right there, man. I don't think we need Cobra Commander and all this, the sniveling and stuff. Destro seems like Doctor Doom when he's done right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love. I think you have the young, maybe the new recruit is the guy who's great with technology, and he's gonna one up this '80s technology basically. So, like in the end, he's the guy who he couldn't make it in the regular military or whatever. But he comes up with a way to really save America and make his dad proud and make it blah, 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 and all that.
Ron loves heroes who have good science skills. That's like,
I do.
He loves it.
100%. I love any genius who solves a problem. I'll watch every TV show where it's a genius that solves a problem. I watched Numbers, House, Monk, all of it. I love them all.
That feels so wrong that the protagonist of your G.I. Joe movie is a nerd.
Yeah.
But you know what?
But he can also be a fighter, like.
Well, the protagonists are always, to me, in this type of movie, the people who gather the team, and it is sort of a nerdy thing to understand the research. You know what I mean? To find all these guys. So I think we got a nerd and a ninja. How about that? That's the team that comes and picks everybody up. A nerd and a ninja pop in to tell you what's up and tell you to get in the truck and it's time to go rock and roll.
Yeah, maybe it's this nerd who kind of is the one that uncovers this mothball G.I. Joe programs. Like, let's try that again, and kind of does this undercover a little bit.
Little bit Jeff Goldblum from Independence Day.
Yeah. And there used to be a character kind of like that called Mainframe. He was the computer guy. Back when computers were as big as a building, he had a computer that was on him that he could carry around. And it was amazing. It blew everybody's minds. It must have had 1 megabyte of RAM. It was amazing computing power.
It downloaded at 14.4 kilobytes per minute.
You could definitely do a thing where this movie opens with whoever Mainframe is. Because the military employs a ton of data scientist type guys, but he ends up hacking the Pentagon. Maybe it's even like, because the military also does hackathons where they just try to find their own weaknesses by setting their people loose on their firewalls. Maybe he wins some sort of hackathon sponsored by the military and he doesn't even realize it, but that's like him being brought into, okay, you need to know the reason we were looking for a guy with your skills is there's an imminent attack about to happen. And so it's like, he's sort of reeling from his Men in Black initiation type thing. He could even be like in the bunker, in the skiff with the guys when the attack happens. And so suddenly he's just off and running because he just happened to be there as part of his recruiting when the big attack happens and, Portland, Oregon is wiped off the map or something.
I would say, Bill, you almost take a page out of the Bumblebee book and you start the movie with a montage of the most amazing love letter scenes of G.I. Joe from the 80s in their prime to just make every fan of G.I. Joe spooge for about 4 minutes. And then it's like you cut to black and then it's close up on hands typing, hacking, and it's present day, like give the fans their G.I. Joe from the past. And then I love it. Then that you're getting into something new,
Mm-hmm.
Right. Oh, and dude, yeah, the scene of like Roadblock, with a big boom box You know what I mean? On the coffee table and like Snake Eyes is dancing. They made Snake Eyes break dance, I think, a couple times. Yeah, I'm just saying, like 80s revelry with these guys would be hilarious to me. They got their uniforms on, they're just like, yeah, save the world, ha ha ha. And they're just so sanctioned and so loved. And when you cut to the future, it's like you're a piece of trash and you're fat now and you're dumb, you suck. You know what I mean? It's like, wow.
I mean, are people treating these G.I. Joes like they were Vietnam vets?
Well, no. I don't. I think they don't remember them, which is the worst.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, so that is special forces, though, too. So,
yeah.
I mean, that special forces is really like when you are sort of a wild man misfit in the military, they put you on special forces. And nobody ever hears about those missions because those missions do all the diciest things. Yeah. So if you're a guy who survives,
and that's
yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go.
I was just gonna say, if you're a guy who survives, you kind of survive into anonymity. It's like you take your pension and you take your health care, and that's what you get, man.
Hey, and the guys that are heroes like that, you're not gonna hear about it on no damn bar stool,
right?
You know what I mean?
Yep. They're not going and getting drunk and talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the thing about these guys, and that's what's so endearing about this format of us kind of digging them up. That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful for the soldiers. That's beautiful for the theme of the movie. That's beautiful stuff. We're digging out these people who can do a job that it seems like these and you know what, that thing about hacking, the imminent attack, I like that too. But it's also like, what if I like this thing of lost technology. Maybe the people who knew about this batch of super weapons and this ability to do this particular type of attack was sort of lost knowledge. And like maybe they found an encrypted file or something that they get this kid to like break it open for them so they could do a bunch of crap, to respond to us being attacked. You know what I'm saying? Because they maybe one old man, Morgan Freeman, remembers that there's this technology that can respond to this thing that we just got hit with. It's not aliens. It's this stuff from 1984 that nobody ever knew about. And here's a floppy disk with the information of how to get this super technology. Here you go. What are you going to do with this?
That is kind of...
They got to pull out a TI 99 4A.
No, but what would be awesome is if it's like, look, we go to Area 51, and the reality is there's no space, there's no flying saucers or aliens there. It's just like the mothballed, space skipper fleet or whatever that they were going to use when they thought they were going to be fighting wars in space until the UN basically outlawed wars in space. But there's still all this shit that exists because they built it all and we're testing it all. And so G.I. Joe now is like the first time that they actually use it. I mean, you could even get, sorry, Ron, last thing, you could even get super meta with it, where if you start with that 80s montage, part of this could be tied to the fall of the Soviet Union. It's sort of like they were gearing up for wars in space with the Soviets, but then the Cold War went away. And so between that and whatever UN resolution was passed in our weird utopian alternate reality, it just becomes like there's no more use for these guys or this tech.
Yeah.
I love it. And it also gives us the ability to have a space dogfight.
That is not realistic, and you get enough of that in Star Wars. So no, that's a hard pass.
No. I took that to mean Snake Eyes throwing his wolf Timber at somebody in space. I don't know.
Guys, the post-credit scene clearly in Area 51 is that one of the vehicles is actually a transformer.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, of course. Oh. Yeah. I'm not of course. That's a brilliant observation. And yes, that must happen because the Hasbro gods tell us it must. Yes.
That is very beautiful.
Much. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we keep sketching out scenes and story ideas. How are we going to cast this? And I think there's an interesting approach where it's like, can we just throw out a bunch of actors that we think are like hairy-chested badasses and just retrofit them into roles in this movie? Or like, how do we do this?
I mean, does this become like the Expendables where we just get every action person we can think of?
I mean, the way that we're kind of talking about it is like you have a group of older Expendables level action stars, and then you have a group of the younger guys who are like the hand-picked military outcasts that form the new G.I. Joe. So
But
what's
do we
that
get the cool
mix?
Expendables theme song? Every one of us is expendable.
Oh, Creed is going to score this whole movie.
Every one of us is a G.I. Joe.
Look, you guys, I would be remiss if I didn't go supernatural, but I'm gonna trick you. Richard Dean Morgan.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan, yeah. Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan should definitely be like one of the supporting older G.I. Joes. I'd buy that all day.
Yeah.
You know, I think also, I don't think all of them have to be from the 80s. Some of them are from like different units that are like we're talking about, units that are going to join the older G.I. Joes. You know what I mean? So like people who are training for whatever level of G.I. Joe we would have now, which they don't have any cool technology. They're just sort of special forces, but super special forces. But they don't have anything super, but they just get a little bit more training. You know, hold your breath for 8 minutes with this knife in your mouth, whatever. You know what I mean? So like those type of people, a couple of them being used to supplement this core group so that at least some of the generals can have somebody with their eyes on them. You know what I'm saying? Because most of these generals now, they were younger men when these guys were and maybe they don't know these guys like that. You know what I mean? The present day generals, maybe they don't trust these old dudes.
Terry Crews, how about?
He's in the Expendables. I don't want anybody that was actually in the Expendables. I was thinking let's aim for the stars. Like what if Brad Pitt wanted to be Flint or something?
Ooh.
You know, he's in his 50s, still rock solid, beat your butt. I mean, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
And he's been a drill sergeant before. He could play Beachhead, Flint, any one of the Joes that have a lot of authority. If you wanted to go Duke, you could do that, seeing as how old we've made some of the Joes.
Yeah, I mean, we're basically talking about sort of an Ocean's 11 style cast here.
Okay,
So,
then
yeah.
are we? No, we can't do Tom Cruise because that's he
I mean,
he can't.
let's be realistic. If we have Brad Pitt, there's maybe room for another top dollar star, but like, we're gonna have to fill this movie out with TV actors. You know, if you do Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise.
Oh, TV actors,
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna have to finally acquiesce to all of Ron's suggestions. I want this dude from Supernatural, this dude from iZombie, this dude from iCarly.
Actually, would
so the kid who plays Wild Dog, I think on Arrow, who was actually he's the I think he's the Afro-Latino kid from Old School.
That's literally what I was going to suggest.
That dude who's been on Arrow for a few seasons is really good, and I would totally buy him in G.I. Joe.
No, I think he'd be really good.
Rick Gonzalez, right?
Yeah, I think that's it.
For an older Joe, what about Eric Dane? He was McSteamy from Grey's Anatomy. I feel like he had such a promising career, I feel like, and then he just I never saw him in anything, but when he left that show, I thought he was going to become like an action guy because he's built for it.
Yeah, he strikes me as like the less coked out version of Josh Duhamel.
Not no coke, just less coked.
No, he actually played he had a long-running military role on The Last Ship, I believe, which was a Michael Bay TV show on, I think, USA. That's a good call. You know, one I was thinking of, a guy who could be, again, he's a fairly top dollar dude, but a guy who I'd love to see do more action roles as an older Joe would be Jamie Foxx as like
that's brilliant,
as like Roadblock or something.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of, I think I could get down with him being any number of those. Basically, like even somebody like Stalker. Stalker was really cool. He was like a paratrooper guy, and just like Jamie Foxx being like, "Ah, man, I don't want to paratroop no more. These knees can't really handle it." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that could be interesting. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Was Antonio Banderas an expendable? I never saw them past the first one.
I believe he was. Yes,
he was eventually.
Bummer.
Yeah, and he was pretty great in it, honestly. But
well, it'd be down to you have like an old. So like we have a couple of old Joes that they have to bring in to like know about the technology. Mainframe, this young person. Maybe Mainframe could be a young person.
Or the guy that played Sawyer on Lost. I remember he was in the 4th Mission Impossible for 35 seconds, and I thought he was going to have a big career too. I can't remember his name anymore.
I don't like that guy. Also, him and Eric Dane are kind of the exact same type of guy. Like, in terms of the typecasting.
I mean, look, this is my very polite way of saying every G.I. Joe is about the same to me. So, yeah, there's definitely a reason.
What about, speaking of Lost, the guy from Lost who was on Hawaii Five-0 for forever, Daniel Day Kim, maybe?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that guy for real. That guy, he's amazing, and he's so athletic, dude. He'd blow you away how athletic he is. Like, and he's like 50. Yeah, he's bad.
He just got over coronavirus. Good for him. He's healthy
nice.
and ready to work.
Nice. Dude, he kicked its ass. He kicked his ass because we got the call from us saying he's in this movie.
What about Elizabeth Olsen for one of the maybe the one of the tech people?
I want Mary Kate. If we're going to go for an Olsen, I want to bring one of them back.
Oh, you know what? No, you know who absolutely has to be in this movie is Mackenzie Davis from the latest. She was the enhanced Terminator from the latest Terminator.
Yes.
She is so good, dude. And I got to tell you, I have loved her since *Halt and Catch Fire*, where she played a hacker in the 80s and absolutely destroyed that role.
But check it out. Check it out. CoverGirl is a badass chick who can fight and fly planes and do computer stuff. So she can be CoverGirl.
Oh,
boom. Because like for real, I have one, Lady J. I don't know if I want her to be old because I want this lady to be able to play her, and her name is Gemma Atherton. If you look
she
up
was
a
in
picture
Quantum
of
of
Gemma
Solace.
Atherton,
Yeah.
Woo, Nelly. And I think she's born in Ireland, if I'm not mistaken. And I think Lady J, who throws javelins that could have special explosives on them or whatever, because we're trying to sell these toys. Because that's what Lady J did. She had like a Casey Jones golf bag full of javelins. Everybody else got guns. She's got guns. And she would whip out these javelins and blow fools up. Dude, it was ill. All I'm saying is Gemma Atherton, and also Lady J had a lilting little bit of an Irish accent. And she was beautiful, and she eventually gets it out with Flint. But I think they just did that because they're the most attractive Joes at that time. I don't really buy it.
Is there a part for J-Lo? I feel like J-Lo would be great in a G.I. Joe movie.
Could J-Lo play the Baroness?
That's what I was thinking, but I don't know G.I. Joe well enough to know if that character was just for that movie or all over.
Absolutely.
Dude, if the Baroness, we make Baroness from South America, Puerto Rico, or somewhere like that, and then check it out. But like I said, Destro is black, and he's a giant. Period. Even if we do the black voice thing on a big giant body, which I'll accept that. But it ain't ideal. I'm talking about big, imposing Kingpin, as close as you can get to Kingpin in Spider-Verse, human being as Destro. Again, we have to feel that Destro sits around the house. You know what I mean?
So who's your casting? Big. Who's your casting?
Who was drafted at tackle in the last draft? You know what I mean? Somebody.
What about? No, he's not that big. I was gonna say like someone like Michael J. White, but he's not that big.
I do love Michael J. White, though.
I was literally about to suggest that, and that guy is an action dynamo. So
yeah, I mean, if we were gonna do a Destro that can really when Snake Eyes hops into the lab where Destro is working on his machinations. And he starts doing his ninja crap and gets his sword snapped in half and kicked in the stomach by this giant. Or rather, this guy was about 5'10", but we film him like he's giant. And it's Michael J. White. I would buy that. And I think Michael J. White's face would look good in the golden mask. I think that would be fresh. A gold and silver, platinum. Maybe he's got several masks.
I love the gold, though. I mean, I think that's an interesting twist. The gold looks better than the silver.
Or you could get the guy... he's a little bit younger, though. It depends on how old Destro is. But from Black Panther, he plays Winston Duke.
Winston Duke, yeah.
Oh, dude,
he's huge.
Winston Duke is Destro. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And he can do
100%.
his own voice. That's the thing. We wouldn't have to have some big oaf and then have some actor do the voice. We'd have a big, giant guy who can do the voice. I think that's fantastic. I don't know. I'm too enthusiastic, but that's great. I think that's great.
I think that's great too.
Okay, I think we need to nail down if this movie is going to be driven by Mainframe and whoever it is that maybe Mainframe and Snake Eyes. If Snake Eyes is sort of the old Joe that helps get the band back together. Who
and plus,
are those two?
I was just going to say, plus he got his face covered, so we can't tell that he's old.
Well, and yeah, I don't know if this is sacrilegious, but maybe he doesn't have, maybe that's a moment in this movie where he doesn't have his face covered. And the minute he puts the mask back on, then you know that like things about to get bad. You know what I mean?
Oh, dude, no, I think you're right, because there were several comics, and the people who like the comics will remember this. There were several comics where Snake Eyes just sort of had a low brimmed hat, and you can see the bottom of his mouth. You know what I mean? And it was like the symbol of him having his whole ninja mask on, but it wasn't quite that. But yeah, when he pulls the mask on, that should mean something. You're right. Yeah, that's a great note, Bill.
Okay. So who's our young military hacker who gets sort of recruited into this program? And then who do we want to play Snake Eyes? I mean, Snake Eyes is definitely going to be an Asian martial artist, I would imagine, right? And if he's older...
My favorite guy.
Do we go with the obvious suggestions here?
Donnie Yen, obviously.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
Well, and I think that would satisfy John Peters because he said, China has to be badass in this, right? That's how I'm remembering it. Yeah, he said China has to be badass. so yeah, he would be Snake Eyes.
I think he said China has to be bad. China is an ass. If that was his, but maybe we could just say it was lost in translation and get around that one.
Absolutely. We like China. Anyway. Oh, you're mulling it over? You're mulling it over. Do we like China? Let me think about it.
I'd be remiss if I didn't suggest Tom Holland. I would feel like I didn't do my job. Tom Holland is our hacker. I think I'm right about this one, guys. So argue amongst yourselves. I've already made the choice.
It's not wrong, but I don't love it. How about that?
Yeah. You know what? And like I said, I don't want Lady J to be old, and I don't want, and CoverGirl isn't old. So I say you take CoverGirl, homegirl that you just said from the last Terminator movie, not the only good thing about that movie, but one of the only good things about that movie. Take that chick. She's the computer lady, and she is the one who hacks into the thing. We just take it out that it has to be a male that does that part.
I like that.
The woman she cracks the stuff, finds out the jazz. They start fighting over it. She finds out she did a big bad thing. It's almost like that's like a theme with us. A lot of times we'll have a character do something that causes, after they have the time to think about it, they see that they've caused the rest of the movie. You know what I'm saying? I think that's pretty good screenwriting.
Look, guys, I'm not trying to brag, but I've been reading script writing stuff and watching YouTube videos about it. And I got to let you know, that is one of the things they say, is that your protagonist should at least be part of what goes wrong. So,
well, let me tell you something, Ron. When you whooped out what the character's central wound was, I knew you'd been boning up on screenwriting.
I'm reading, all right?
I knew that.
Yeah. I want to get smart so that I can compete with you guys, all right? So
I was not ready for that.
Dude, the baby grows up. Yeah. So the bottom line is, so we have 80s technology. People are fighting over it. CoverGirl starts the plot. Is she part of the guys that go grab up the other Joes then, I guess? Does she hack one thing to find where Snake Eyes is at or something like that?
I'm telling you, man, I think there's mileage to the idea that like she almost gets Jack Ryan'd into this thing where it's like she proves her mettle, and so they bring her in, but she's totally in over her head, and things are just happening so fast that she has to dive into it. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, she doesn't. Maybe she doesn't find it at the behest of the government. Then she finds them on her own, and then they swoop her up into this jazz because now she's in it.
Well, but that's what I mean. Like, I don't even know. Because again, going with this like smooth, lean, constantly moving Michael Bay version of things that I'm seeing in my head,
Don't have time to think about it.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think there's a mystery of like where or how they get this mothball technology. I think it's more just like we need to survive long enough so that we can pull this stuff out of mothballs and get you working on the 1980s computer to get it back online. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's a mystery about it at all.
Oh, yeah. That's dope. So basically she does something and that causes the Joes to find her and then her place gets attacked and then bounce or whatever. So,
I mean, I literally think it's like she is in a secured bunker in the Pentagon getting a briefing and then suddenly the Pentagon is blown up. You know what I mean? And so it's like they crawl out of the wreckage and then they're trying to figure out what's going on. And then the Cobra forces arrive to like pick off survivors. And now it's just a mad dash. And then it's like, how do they just escape from this war zone so that they can even get to Area 51 and contact all that? You know what I mean? It's like, it just needs to be that freight train of like, now more stuff is happening. Now more stuff is happening.
I love it. I think that's great.
That was the best summarization of G.I. Joe I've ever heard. It's just a freight train of now more stuff's happening. That's literally how I would describe G.I. Joe to someone who had never seen it.
All right, so if we're saying that it's Mackenzie Davis and Donnie Yen survive this thing and then go to work bringing the team together, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I think the next question then becomes, who's the director, and is there any bit of the plot that we still need to shore up, which maybe is connected? Like if the director is bringing something to it to figure something out, I don't know. I keep saying Michael Bay, and I just want to be clear. I don't want Michael Bay to direct this movie.
I figured.
You want Simon West.
I was thinking J.J. Abrams on this one. I know we suggest him a lot, but I feel like that is the kind of pace of a movie that he does very, very well. Stuff just keeps happening. Keep the stuff happening. Make it look cool, but also keep it coordinated and making sense.
You know what I'm going to say and really mean it? I'm going to really mean this. Bong Joon-ho. Because this is stupid and ridiculous and very American. And I think we get a foreigner to look at our Americanness from the outside. And I think he would really, you know what I mean? I think he could really elucidate the themes of, the romanticization of endless war. Wow, that's pretty articulate.
If you do toot your own horn.
No, but for real, you know what I mean? I think he could point that out very subtly. And the endless war, that's what this is about. This is supposed to be, buried. We're supposed to have nice combat or covert stuff. And then all of a sudden, ancient toys are unearthed and everything goes bad. And there's only a crack squad that can handle it. I like that whole framework, because that isn't quite as jingoistic as them being proactive and going into insert a Blankistan and doing some covert mission all the time.
I'd say for sure. I just wonder if you're going to get, there's something about this, like this movie has to be so straightforward. I almost wonder if Bong Joon-ho would be too smart for the movie. You know what I mean?
Like, I almost wonder, and again, like,
okay, then Tom Holland directs.
Do you get the Russo brothers because they were able to do something like The Winter Soldier, and you're like, yeah, do that, but with G.I. Joe.
That's interesting.
I mean,
I love that.
I think you back up the money truck or try to get them, because they are trying to do their own producing ventures and stuff. I think if you give them a piece of the make their production house one of the production houses that contributes heavily to this movie, do some special deal where they get a special credit, like Russo brothers and Hasbro present really help, really, give them the reach around, I think that they would go for that. And their masters, this sort of, that Winter Soldier fight between Bucky and Homeboy, any of them, but mostly the one where they're doing Muay Thai and he's kneeing them into the van and stuff. You really can't beat that. John Wick kind of almost doesn't beat that. It's super guys fighting.
So, I mean, yes to all that. And I feel like the only problem with that is the cost of hiring the Russo brothers at this point. Maybe a lower budget alternative, but who could bring the same kind of visceral physicality. Gareth Evans, director of The Raid.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
how did I not think about that?
Yeah. Him directing ninjas, sign me up for that.
Yeah. If the Russo brothers want to take less money, great. Otherwise, yeah.
Play hardball with the Russo brothers.
Hey,
We got this guy waiting in the wings.
I work for John Peters, like whatever.
Yeah, but look, I think when you back the truck up to the Russos, you give them that Nolan deal like he got for Man of Steel. Like, hey, when we make Transformers, we'll put your name on that one too, and you'll get that money, even if you have nothing to do with it.
That's true.
Because don't be fooled. Christopher Nolan had little to nothing to do with Man of Steel.
But dude, just imagine, okay, and sidebar real quick, at the end of our movie, after one of these robots in disguise transforms out of the Booker, it's just like, yeah, you guys up here looking for dope technology. I'm right here. I'm a transformer over here. He doesn't talk like that because it's a cooler movie. But if bottom line, he transforms. Dude, imagine Transformers doing the raid type action to each other that you can actually see and appreciate. That'd be
got very
so
excited.
sick. That'd be
now I can't
sick.
wait till we do Transformers, guys.
Oh, that would be so sick. Transformers John Wicking each other for real. Like,
yeah. But that's down
man.
the road. That's not in this movie. Get it together, Ed.
No, I'm just dreaming. California dreaming. The climax, Destro is defeated but not dead. And maybe there's a shadow of Transformers and a little spindly guy who kicks it with the Transformers. Maybe that's Cobra Commander. Maybe it's Serpentor or something. Set up the next toy is all I'm saying. Give him a glimpse of the next toy.
It's all very exciting. I'm wondering if there's
something's missing for you, Bill.
There is. I don't know what it is. I'm literally trying to figure out what it is that's missing for me. And
we don't have character arcs. That's a big one.
That's probably it. Well, I also, what we don't have is like a third act. Like, I don't know where the movie goes, and I don't know like what is that sort of stand up and cheer ending that we're building toward. Like from everything that we've said, I could totally picture the first act is Mainframe getting indoctrinated in, and the attack happens, and Snake Eyes, who is just there in this weird advising capacity, suddenly proves that he's a huge ninja superstar and gets her out, and then they're on the run, and then it's like this program existed, and now we need to get the team back together that knows about it. And I get the Armageddon style, getting the team together. I get the second act is like getting everybody together and then training on the equipment and then plotting some sort of assault, like counter assault on Cobra. But then what is it? You know what I mean? Like,
okay, I think I know. It's destroying the technology. Because it's very easy, but it's something that makes sense because it's also
but we can't destroy the toys. That doesn't make any sense. We can't destroy the toys.
What is the
or hiding it?
What's the status quo that we're leaving the movie on? You know what I mean? Like, is G.I. Joe now just a sanctioned part of the government? Like, is the world in chaos? Does G.I. Joe disband at the end of the movie because they thought it was just, it's just this one mission and now we succeeded? Is Cobra still around? I just want to know, like, where does the story go? It feels too much like a toy commercial right now is what I'm saying.
That means it's perfect, Bill. Jesus.
Look, there's the story arc. The story arc is at the end. Lady J's dad gives her a hug and says she's proud of her. And then that's the end. That's the end. That's it.
Well, like I said, I think overall it is as silly as Ron keeps saying it. One of them needs a wound. One of them needs something that will be resolved by getting this band back together. Which is why maybe it isn't a young person that starts this. Somebody has to get something resolved by the fact that the band is back together. You know what I mean? Somebody has to get their meaning of life back.
Well, that's why I think Snake Eyes is a tough character to make that point person, just because the fact that he doesn't talk and the fact that like we don't know anything about his personal life, I feel like you have to throw that out the window if he's going to be your co-lead, because otherwise, how are you going to get an arc out of the guy?
I 100% agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe he just has started talking.
Oh my God. Could you imagine Snake Eyes in a full 3-piece suit with his helmet on, just like, good morning, everybody, with his little coffee mug?
A cup of coffee?
He's got a mug.
Says best
good morning, Joes. What about this? What if we kind of we're getting the band back together, but what if we focus kind of one of them, let's just for the sake of argument, because I know the name Duke is like the main guy. And what if one of them does the whole, I know it's a trope, but maybe this will spur something. I have a good life now. I'm happy. I'm out of it. I have wife. I have kids. I don't want to do this anymore. Thanks, but goodbye. Like, kind of give one of them at least the like, why should I go back to something that I gave everything to this? I saved the world 1,000 times. Nobody cared. Nobody knew. I made a life for myself now. Why on earth should I go back?
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Yes. Ending that. I think that person is either, I mean, there is this hardcore ass dude named Beachhead that is really hardcore. And the thing is, he's not Snake Eyes. Put Snake Eyes on the desk. Put Snake Eyes over here for a minute. Mm-hmm. Beachhead is trained in super duper night combat, improvised weapons. He wears a mask, but he talks a lot. He's charismatic. He takes his mask off too. He does a lot of the stuff that a lot of the diehards want Snake Eyes to do. Let's let Snake Eyes go be a ninja. And let's have somebody practical and cool maybe be the guy. And that's why I was pitching Brad Pitt so hard. Because I think imagine Brad Pitt doing a little bit of what he did in Inglourious Bastards in a more super military persona. That's what Beachhead is.
Oh,
that's
you guys,
his whole
and
attitude.
I got a weird idea. Let me ask what you guys think of it. Okay. So my problem with not having Snake Eyes talk is now we're having an Asian guy not say any words in our film. And that kind of bothers me.
Not John Peters, though. John Peters will love that.
Yes, exactly. So what I would like is maybe nobody's ever asked him a question. They always just tell him to go do stuff. And then our main character literally goes, "What do you think, Snake Eyes?" And then he's like, just starts talking. And then someone's like, "You have never said a word to us ever." And then he goes, "You never asked me a question."
Ron, that is literally a gag from The Simpsons.
Is it?
Yes, they do.
I remember when Pikachu, this clip went around. I've never seen a Pokemon anything, but Pikachu talked in one of the movies and someone filmed the theater audience booing and throwing stuff at the screen. I think of Snake Eyes. I don't even know G.I. Joe, but I know enough that if we make Snake Eyes talk, forget it. It's we did not achieve Reboot.
Also, and I'm definitely not trying
Great.
to be...
I'm looking excited. I'm very excited to be a part of the movie that makes an Asian guy say no words for 2 hours.
That's not us, though. That's the character that they made.
I know.
Hold on. I just said, you got to put that ninja crap on the shelf. I think it's okay. It's okay for us to not have stupid Cobra Commander in this movie. Then it's okay not to have stupid Snake Eyes. Stop it with this ninja stuff. You bring a sword to a gunfight, you die. Mm-hmm. Stop it. Mm-hmm. Stupid. So just throw it away. Screw it. No, screw it. And like I just said, Beachhead wears a mask sometimes, has a cool accent, talks a lot for a good actor to say lines, and he's a drill instructor who literally trained the G.I. Joes. So the dismantling of the program is a personal slight. Them coming back and being a world force means something. If it's Beachhead, that's what I'm trying to say.
I don't mean to inject a political agenda into this, but like, what if Beachhead, his whole arc is that he misses it a little too much?
I'm down with that. I'm down with that.
You know what I mean? And so like, Act 2 feels like, he's achieved his... It's like he's re-achieved his purpose in life by the G.I. Joe program coming back. But then Act 3 is like, maybe he's the one who wants to go and like invade a country and just rain holy fire down. And it's sort of like they have to not do that. Like they have to be more strategic to maintain world peace while still taking down the Cobra terrorists.
Right. And due to the fact that when he wants to do that, and it's proven that the reason why they were being forced to do that was Cobra trying to trick their ass into getting framed up for some crap. You know what I mean? And due to that, somebody putting their hand on their shoulder, freaking Lady Jaye puts her hand on her shoulder and says, "No, we can't do this," or Covergirl, whoever. They stop him from doing that. And then he sees, okay, by the end, he's become a real hero because it's not about the thirst of war. It's trying to get the job done to save people. It's a more pure motivation.
You know what else I
like
like? You just mentioned that if Cobra's whole thing is like trying to spark the G.I. Joes to go out and like ignite wars, that's an interesting motivation for them, right? Like,
yeah, I was actually about to say I would love it if it turned out, you know, the space weapon technology from the 80s that they're even going for, like, it doesn't do anything. It's not even the threat. They're just Cobra's trying to plant the seeds to get the Joes to fight this war over something that doesn't even work or doesn't exist.
Now you're talking a third act twist that I can sink my teeth into. I like that a lot. I
like
that
the
idea.
rods from space don't work. They have rail guns, yes. They have really cool tanks that are better than regular tanks, yes. They have a little body armor that's more resistant than stuff, yes. But that's about it. But they're threatening extension level rods from space, different stuff that they don't have that doesn't work. That's kind of interesting, yeah.
There's a great twist to that where it's like if the whole movie is just escalation, because if they get this space-based fleet online, they can literally kill 3 billion people with the push of a button, right? And then it turns out that's not real. The thing that they were actually trying to do is just get you foaming at the mouth about it so that you would break this tenuous world peace that the world kind of exists in our universe. And
I love it.
It's sort of a weird metaphor for like what ISIS and Al-Qaeda was actually trying to do, right? Is just make the panic sort of destroy U.S. hegemony. I like that. That now I'm understanding what we're doing.
It took 90 minutes to get to something that finally interests us.
Well,
good job, guys.
Hey, you like it, I love it. Yeah, and I appreciate you, Bill, because honestly, this one's going to go down in Rebooted history because there was a point where we could just declare Rebooted and say that we won, like a certain other president did in a certain military situation.
Well played, Ed. Well played.
We could have did that, but we did not.
Then you got me and Ron to fight over xenophobia of Snake Eyes when it didn't even exist.
Dude. Excellent.
No, but you know what? I really, now this movie has an arc and a point, right? Where it's like, we still have the 80s tech, the threat, brings the Joes out of retirement, gets the band back together, pulls all their experimental tech out of mothballs. But then we kind of address the weird geopolitical quagmire of being rah, rah, go Joe in 2020. And the movie could still leave us with like, no, even if you're attacked, even when your back's up against the wall, even when you think there's an existential threat, reason and diplomacy still have to remain part of what you're doing. And then you can go in and surgically murder everybody as long as you do that,
and I'll do you one better. The whole thing, when I got on that rant earlier and I kind of lost my thread or whatever, I was building up to, weapons pulled out of mothballs, yada, yada, yada. End thing. Part of the victory is us having to have people from around the world help us with certain things or something. Like that, it's not about Joes coming in and being the cops of the world. We get a little bit of an okay from a couple of the places that are directly affected
from
or
the
something.
Beginning.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, I
point from
get
the
that.
beginning.
I just want to make it very, very clear, like, so that we can maybe make one of them from some weird foreign place and make them a Joe and little stuff so we can sell more toys. I'm just saying, we got to make it clear that these different around the world Joes. That's the next line. Around the world Joes.
So did the Reiterator just return?
Yeah, he showed up a couple times this episode.
Well, guys, Reiterator or no, I'm going to call it. I think we have achieved Reboot.
I think we did.
A casting exercise that went all over the board, but I think we had some really interesting choices, actually. As we've said before, hit us in the comments below because we want to hear your casting choices. We want to hear how you would make sense of all these different names that we threw up against the wall to see what would stick. And once again, we got to remind you, next week, be at this YouTube channel on Saturday, May 30th. We are going live for Fantastic Four to wrap up season 2 of Rebooted. Don't get too sad. We will stick around maybe even before season 3 shows up. We might have a few goodies for you dropping on the channel, but definitely be there for the finale. It is going to be huge.
Well, dude, I'm glad that we did the Joes right. It took a little longer because the product is a little harder to sell in these times, but I think we got an angle, and I think Mr. Peters would be proud.
Absolutely. We'll have to deal with that whole China situation. You know what it is? We got to put something in here about how one country not sharing the full extent of what they know endangers everybody. Because then it doesn't even have to be China, right? But you could just draw the connection of like, okay, when you try to stifle news reporting or you try to stifle like the reality of whatever situation you're in, that's a problem.
Nice.
I would also like to, at the end, remind everybody that I still like G.I. Joe and I love all you guys.
I might have come around a little bit in this episode.
Hey, again, if you want to check out some cross promotion, Billy Business's episode of Hot Takes, where I'm talking about Punisher, kind of gets out a lot of these ideas that we're talking about. The regular American with special skills can do as much as any superhero. And that's
if you want to actually hear me defend G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra with Hal Rudnick, that episode is there too. So lots going on my channel.
So Hot Takes with Billy Business is the podcast. And then on the Nerd Goat podcast, I don't think we've done a G.I. Joe character, guys, have we?
Nope, not yet.
No. Nobody's brought Snake Eyes or Storm Shadow. I think those might be coming up.
Well, check out Nerd Goat. Check out Hot Takes with Billy Business. Come back next week for the live season finale of Reboot It. And guys, be safe out there. We love you guys, even if not all of us love G.I. Joe. Take care.